Well, ladies and gentlemen, a lot has happened in this space over the last week in which I was not able to upload. If you guys did watch my most recent video talking about YouTube essentially banning me and giving me a strike, I wasn't able to upload any content, especially around one of the biggest weeks for HBAR. Now, you might be looking at the price chart and saying, well, Nick, how was it one of the biggest weeks for HBAR when the price action is still around 18 cents? And honestly, it's one of the biggest weeks for HBAR because we pretty much made history. We're going to talk about that. We're going to address it. Obviously, yes, we have to address the price action as well because, again, it's one of the biggest things that everyone, talks about. It's the biggest thing that everyone focuses on as well. So, when it comes back to the price action, if you guys watched my previous HBAR videos, you know that I've been watching this wedge basically forming on the chart. This is that wedge. And, since the big announcement, which if you guys did miss it, yes, HBAR did have an ETF approval. We did have a nice wick to the upside, hit the upper trend line, and then rejected off of it. We hit the blue zone, couldn't get a close over the blue zone on the daily, which is also why we are now rejecting. And we will most likely hit this lower trend line around like the mid 16 cent region, if that is the case. Overall, when it comes back to price action in the space, we're still just focused on Bitcoin. We're still focused on what Bitcoin is doing. And, during this time, it's almost like impossible to, get bullish on almost anything beyond fundamentals. Because again, price action in the space across the board has just been very disappointing. And this is most likely going to continue until we start to see Bitcoin bounce back. So, during this time, I've always mentioned one of the biggest things to focus on is simply just fundamentals around these projects because that's pretty much the only main thing that we have to grasp at this moment because price action just simply isn't there. And price action really hasn't been there since going all the way back here to January of the year. We had a nice little spike back in July, but beyond that, most of the price action has been pretty weak. And this is not just HBAR, it's across the entire board. Crypto itself has been pretty boring, frustrating, and just kind of negative for the last roughly 9 months or so. But beyond that, right? Let's take a quick look at a few things. Number one, obviously, we are constantly seeing more and more market exposure. This one is coming from Kraken. We just saw a new USD margin pair available around Hedera. Obviously, this is built within their pro side of their app, which is their pro now trading Hedera HBAR margin. Again, just more exposure to HBAR, more pairs. More exposure to, HBAR from the retail side of things. So this is definitely going to add for, more volume, more value moving around Hedera. So we like to see that. This is definitely a big update. And then also beyond that, we are constantly seeing more and more updates behind the scenes for the dev activity. And for those that did miss the recent post from Token Relations, this goes back to the 29th of October. The amount of Hedera developers hit a new high on the month. This is the most among all layer 1 blockchains aside from Ethereum. And yeah, listen, there's been so much happening around Hedera from the dev side. The ecosystem has been expanding. We've been addressing that over the last couple weeks. And there's just been more and more projects added to the Hedera ecosystem that I'm more so getting very excited about at this moment because, again, it kind of feels as though the entire crypto space is shifting away from that hype, sort of filled area to a more mature side, which is something that we've been addressing and talking about for years happening. And I feel like we are starting to see signs of hope that is becoming a reality. And in this world of crypto where, hype is no longer the driver, fundamentals become very important. And I do think that that's why when it comes back to Hedera, one of the biggest things that I've been addressing outside of price action is simply fundamentals. And I know that kind of gets you guys a bit angry. I understand. I get it, right? I'm holding HBAR as well. I understand how frustrating it can be for me to be like, oh, hey, this is very big news. Hey, this is great. This is, awesome for Hedera. And then you go and look at the price chart and it's like, all right, well, we're still down since going all the way back to January. This has been 10 months. Like, what the heck is going on? And, again, when we think about where this space currently is, we are still in that hype and speculative cycle of crypto where fundamentals just simply aren't the price driver. But we are starting to see signs of hope that it's becoming, a reality. And what are those signs of hope? Well, it's more institutional grade adoption. Wall Street engagement. We're also starting to see the government, really embracing crypto and crypto tech like stablecoins. And I just feel as though we're kind of moving away from, that typical crypto themed cycle to a much more mature, serious side of the space, which is something that I've been waiting forever to happen. Now, we still need the Clarity Act and things like that to go through, but, we are definitely getting there. Now, beyond this, ETFs. So, obviously, when it comes back to HBAR and a lot of altcoins in this space, actually, they have a ton of ETFs still waiting in the waiting room. Big shout out to HBAR Tata. You're going to be seeing his name brought up more times in this video as well, because we do want to go over a few stats from Canary Capital, which is the first ETF for HBAR. But we have Grayscale highlights the 12 crypto assets expected to qualify for spot ETPs based on generic listing standards in a new report. Now, for those that don't know, that generic listing standard is the standard that the SEC created back in the summer, and HBAR ETFs definitely are a big one to focus on when it comes to this. But here we have Grayscale Hedera Trust ETF, Rex Shares Osprey HBAR ETF as well, plus up to 10 basket ETFs all surrounding HBAR. These are the 12 that we are focused on. Now, in terms of the Grayscale list, here we have investors can anticipate a significant increase in the number of exchange-traded products, ETPs, offering exposure to crypto assets due to new guidance from U.S. regulators. And of course, yes, Hedera is one of those projects here, as you guys can see. And, again, when we are thinking about ETPs or ETFs for, altcoins, are they a big deal? Well, they're a big deal if they are spot-based, which if we're looking at this is all surrounding spot-based ETPs and ETFs. Why is that important? Well, because again, spot-based means it's going to affect the value. It's going to affect the volume. So this can severely impact the volume and value moving into HBAR. And we're talking about spot-based HBAR. We're not talking about paper trading or anything like that. No, this will impact HBAR, the same HBAR that we are holding. So this is very bullish, and this is why I've always been focused on spot-based ETPs and ETFs. Now, talking more so about that, here we have another list from Frecky_OG. Yes, most investors are not prepared for the supply shock coming to HBAR. Obviously, when it comes back to the whole idea of a supply shock, I'm not necessarily looking at it in a sense of oh, hey, we're going to see a supply shock for HBAR. Long term, we could definitely see that if more retail is buying HBAR, institutions are lining up, Wall Street has their ETFs that are starting to lock up a significant amount of, supply. And then also you have to think about enterprise grade use cases and retail grade use cases as well, also impacting the supply of HBAR. Could definitely get there, but, it's not going to happen overnight or anything like that. Now, if we're looking at all of the ETF filings, these are the ones. And let me just open this up real quick in a new tab. So here we have Hedera named in 13 US ETF filings. So here are the baskets, right? So these are all of the major baskets. We have T. Rowe Price Active Crypto ETF, ProShares CoinDesk Crypto 20 ETF. We have 21 Shares FTSE Crypto 10 Index ETF, Canary American Made Crypto ETF, Crane Shares Coinbase 50 Index ETF, CF Large Cap Crypto Index ETF, and then we also have the Rex Osprey ones as well. But, these are all of the baskets, and then we have the single assets on the left side. The Canary HBAR ETF is now officially live. So we are definitely looking into this, and there could be a ton of new updates around, these specific ETF filings. And if we're going over here to Hedera Foundation, they did celebrate this. They said today marks history as HBAR becomes the third ever crypto ETF to launch after Bitcoin and Ethereum. Now, this did get announced on the 28th. I do apologize for not being able to make any videos during that week. But this is definitely a big one because number one, yes, it is the third ever crypto ETF to launch. And this is after Bitcoin and Ethereum. Now we have to make this clear, out of the 19 million plus cryptocurrencies that CoinMarketCap tracks, it was the Canary Fund's HBAR ETF that passed, citing Hedera's institutional grade network. To get here, Hedera did not take the easy path. From day one, the network was designed to be regulatory compliant and architected from the ground up to host mission critical enterprise and institutional grade use cases. This meant no cutting corners, no legal gray areas exploited, just a mission-driven approach to onboard the world's largest institutions to Web3. Today, we can celebrate that this commitment has positioned the network to capture not just institutional-grade use cases, but also institutional capital. Alongside this spot ETF listing from Canary, there are 12 other ETFs filed that reference HBAR. We just talked about a lot of these. This is the full list. For some networks, ETFs may be the end game. For Hedera, this is just one piece of the puzzle. Next up, institutional grade DeFi, which has always been something that I've talked about, right? Ripple has been addressing institutional DeFi. Almost any major utility-based network in this space has been fully focused on institutional grade DeFi. And it's because this is, the main focus. This is where we do see the largest players out there around even finance moving in on DeFi grade use cases. This is where we start to see those big money moves happen, where we are starting to bring on asset classes on chain. So I'm very excited about this. And then this has been a long time coming. We hope you join us as we continue to onboard the world's largest institutions to the network. And then, of course, yes, we do have a full view of the GC list. Now, this is definitely a historical one. And, we also did see, them celebrate as well on the 1st, which was the end of the historical week for Hedera, ringing the NASDAQ closing bell with Canary funds for the HBAR ETF. Now, I only have the updated view from the 3rd, which we'll talk about here in a moment. But I want to play a quick video clip. This is from Canary Capital Group's founder and CEO, Stephen McClurg. We have Live on Business. Stephen McClurg discusses the HBAR ETF and Hedera as the leading network for enterprises. Check this out.
What about Hedera?
Yeah, Hedera is really not even a blockchain. It's something that's a little bit unique. It's more of a mesh network of nodes that holds information, and it allows enterprise solutions to be able to actually grab data very quickly. Which is why it's the leading technology utilized by enterprise.
And yeah, this is something that a lot of people kind of get wrong about Hedera. They still think that it's just blockchain technology, but it's not, right? Hashgraph is its own technology sort of standard. And, I really do think that almost everyone should be paying attention to what Hedera is building, simply because of how diverse it is compared to all of these other, technologies in this space. And also on top of that, right, if we're thinking about that tech stack, and if we're thinking about what Hedera is focused on, and, institutional DeFi now becoming a reality, this is just one of the, smaller side announcements around Hedera. And I'm sure that we will see a lot more ETF filings as well, and, ETFs going live. But to really kind of put a spotlight on how big this ETF has been, I've been seeing a lot of people saying like, oh, it wasn't really that impactful at all. The price action's still back down. It's not so much about that. It's more so about how much demand there was for this ETF. And HBAR Tata did post 2 posts regarding this. So, we did see major inflows on the 30th. It now holds over 172 million HBAR. This is equivalent to $34 million. That's up 34x since launch a couple of days ago. And then this quickly morphed into 72 million inflows on the next day, the 31st. This is now holding over 235 million HBAR, equivalent to 45 million. That's 0.5% of all HBAR absorbed in 3 days by just one ETF. Again, this is highlighting just how big ETFs are for a lot of these altcoins, and also, what type of impact they do have on the underlying asset. Now, to really put this more into perspective on where we are currently today, again, I only have this up to date as of 11/3. If we're looking at this, we could see that there's over 262, almost 263 million HBAR held here, equivalent to over $51.2 million. This is a very large amount. And again, it just goes to show you that, there is a huge amount of demand for ETFs, even if it is, just a smaller altcoin that a lot of people are just really not paying attention to, because again, HBAR is number 18 on the top 100 list. You would expect this type of momentum from like a larger project. We are seeing a lot of adoption here. We're starting to see a lot of growth happening and a lot of demand growing as well around some of these core, ETFs. And again, I do think that this is just the beginning. I think that we start to see a lot more ETFs going live. We're starting to see the market really kind of open up. We have the market structure bill, potentially getting worked on and getting very close to being approved. That's just going to open the floodgates a little bit more. So, when we really think about what's happening here, this is just the start, especially for a lot of these great networks like Hedera. Obviously, with them being focused on institutional DeFi, I'm very excited about what's going to happen with that. And I'm just definitely looking forward to seeing what gets announced next from Hedera. This is definitely a great start. It's a huge push around Hedera as well. And it's also a big, confirmation of just how far ahead Hedera is compared to some of these other projects and companies in this space. Because again, they've always been working with regulators since day one. They've always been, compliant, and they've always been fully focused on the big, target, which is, of course, building out critical tech for enterprises and institutional players. So with that being said, guys, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video.